It's funny to imagine an individual human as an apex predator, isn't it? Compared to the evolutionary efficiency of a shark or a lion or a crocodile, Greg from finance doesn't exactly scream predator. At least not in nature's sense of the word. Humans have elevated themselves above the food chain in such a way that kind of removes them from it entirely. At least that's how it feels in everyday life, comfortably nestled in our little hollows of blankets and heating and Hot Pockets and Pornhub. Don't mix those two up. If you choose to strip yourself of these creature comforts and step back into nature, the world is more than happy to digest you. This video is sponsored by Rush B Art, the best place to get your fix of nostalgic gaming prints. More about them later in the video. Just a couple hours from where I live is the Great Dividing Range. Well, part of it. The range spans 3,500 kilometers from the northern tip of Cape York all the way down to the western reaches of Victoria. It's breathtaking, one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, but it's also not an unusual place for people to disappear. In 2008, an experienced hiker set off on a morning trek, telling his wife he'd be home for lunch. Despite extensive searches in the weeks after, no evidence of the 57-year-old Warren Mayer ever showed up. In 2011, a similarly experienced David Prideaux heads off on a winter hunting trip with a rifle, a GPS, emergency radio, and plenty of supplies. But not a trace of him has been found since. 8 years later, a 39-year-old Niels Becker heads off for a similar trek through Victoria's high country. Like the two before him, Becker is experienced. And after providing regular updates for the first 3 days of his trip, he disappears. Around the same time, retiree Conrad Whitlock vanished in the same area. Just a few weeks before shooting this video, 23-year-old Hadi Nizari went missing, just a few hours east from here. His friends were expecting to meet him at a campground a few hours north of Kosciuszko National Park, but Nizari never arrived. 2 weeks later, he was found by another group of hikers, exhausted, but alive. The gorgeous vistas of the Victorian Alps are not without risk. You don't have to head far out of Melbourne to start losing cellular coverage, and the dense forests of alpine ash mean that losing sight of the trail is an easy mistake to make. One could roll their ankle, hit their head on the way down, and simply never be seen again. It's scary to think that just a few steps out of well-established suburbia could be how you end up in the maw of the world, roots closing around your corpse like incredibly patient teeth. The trees don't need to be alive in the mammalian sense to consume you, though being crushed by an ant would speed up the process. There's an area of the Great Dividing Range that is widely known for its fascinating stone formations, as well as an old Australian story. The 1967 novel Picnic at Hanging Rock tells the tale of a schoolgirl's day trip to the titular Hanging Rock, resulting in the disappearances of multiple students and teachers. It was adapted into a rather popular film in 1975 by Peter Weir. Yes, Dead Poets Society and Truman Show Peter Weir, but I'll spare you the details, both so you can experience the mystery firsthand, but also because a lot of the stuff in that movie YouTube is not a fan of, so we're gonna... In the real world, Hanging Rock has been the choice location for multiple First Nations tribes to perform sacred acts. Traditional beliefs say that the summit of the strange rock formations is home to evil spirits, but much of the indigenous verbal history was lost due to colonists being colonists. The superstition around the iconic rock formation amplifies the mystique of the Great Dividing Ranges and her many disappearances. In a similar vein, movies like the Blair Witch Project perpetuate the horrors hidden in the trees. A handful of film students set off to make a documentary about the titular Blair Witch of Burkittsville, and after stumbling across and desecrating a small graveyard in the woods,
with your life,
the students find themselves unable to navigate back to their car.
now this is the most direct way back to the car.
Seriously, really?
Yes.
The next few days expose them to escalating fear. Twigs snapping in the dark,
Hello?
cairns mysteriously appearing overnight,
And there are piles of rocks outside of our tent.
Voodoo-esque stick figures hang in the trees.
That's fucking creepy.
Things that you could attribute to the madness that might seep into your mind as the endless horizon of trees blends together, or perhaps they're a sign that the forest is ready to feast. It's not hard to imagine how such an environment would digest you. The roots that slowly shift through the soil, hungrily searching for water and piercing through just about anything that gets in the way. The endless sprawl of invisible fungus, threads of mycelium spanning inconceivably large areas underneath our feet. The largest documented mycelium network covers 10 square kilometers. That's about 3 times Central Park for the Yanks. These fungal phone lines secrete enzymes that break down the complex organic compounds, like the various tissues that make up the human body, helping to feed the trees until the forest's next victim stumbles along. But the forest isn't the only wilderness that can consume you. In the same way that the impenetrable horizon of the trees can quickly isolate an unaware hiker, the endless dunes of the desert can leave you trapped in limbo, isolated from the rest of the world. Many years ago, my brother and I got lost in the dunes. With the four-wheel drive group parked in a deep valley in the middle of the desert, 2 young kids tumbling down the wrong side of a sand dune may very well have spelled a dry end for us. We did, thankfully, find our way back, given that I'm here. Hello. But just a few minutes in the scorching summer sun instilled a panic in me that I haven't felt since. The empty quarter, or Arub al-Khali in Arabic, encompasses most of the Arabian Peninsula. In 2020 alone, 131 people went missing in Saudi Arabia's deserts. 100 of those people were found alive. 20 returned home in a less fortunate state, and 11 were simply never found, just consumed by the ever-changing sands. And the violent winds of the desert do indeed shape the sands in a way that might surprise you. Some of the most extreme locations have documented sand dunes moving up to 2 meters per week. Forget sandstorms, a couple of days would be enough to bury you and any evidence of your existence forever, quite literally becoming lost to the sands of time. And no, we're not talking about that movie.
Give back what you stole, Persian!
A movie we are going to talk about is one of my favorites that my dad showed me growing up, which is the 1965 Flight of the Phoenix, which was originally a novel by Alston Trevor, and then it was also readapted in 2004. Don't watch that one. Do you want to know why the 2004 movie is bad? Here's a quick montage. It follows the survivors of a plane crash fighting against the elements of the Sahara. An unexpected sandstorm clogs the plane's engines, with the crash leaving the aircraft stranded, far off course, with no chance of a recovery crew finding them. The obvious conflicts come from the tension between the men as they try to survive, much like any survival story like Lord of the Flies. But the desert itself is a primary antagonist in this story. With only a few days' worth of rations, the crew scrabbles desperately to find solutions to survive. Early in the story, 2 men head off to find an oasis, rather optimistically. One of them quickly succumbs to the Sahara sun, and the other barely makes it back to the wreck alive. As the rest of the crew attempts to rebuild the plane, the fatigue of the heat eats away at their physical and mental capacity, leading to some, unfortunately, fatal decisions. But when you die in the barren wastes of the desert, there's much less floral and microbial life ready to consume your corpse. Unlike the networks of moss and roots of mycelium that feast in the forests, the desert is home to one of the most barren ecological environments. While there are trees scattered throughout the desert, like the thorny acacia, don't expect their roots to turn you into pulled pork like they would in a more lush environment. Much like any living thing in the desert, acacia trees are very focused on maximizing the efficiency of their resource consumption. Digging through the sand to try and find your corpse isn't very high on the priority list for them. The limited diversity of flora is mirrored by the fauna, the very few predators and scavengers that would make the most of your flesh. The reality is that the sands themselves will consume you before anything else even gets a chance. But the sands of the sea are a different story entirely. Australia's 17th Prime Minister, Harold Holt, disappeared off this very beach in December of 1967, just 2 years after he entered office. Cheviot Beach is relatively unassuming, similar to many of the other beaches along the peninsula. But unlike some of the more popular beaches, Cheviot Beach is on the southern side of the Mornington Peninsula, which exposes it to the Bass Strait, the waters between mainland Australia and Tasmania, instead of the sheltered waters of Port Phillip Bay. The waters at the tip of the peninsula are really volatile, with at least 50 ships being wrecked in the mouth of the bay here, known as the Rip. The weather is fickle, the waves are massive, the rocks are sharp, and the water is shallow. The ocean opens her jaw, ready to swallow any seafarer unfortunate enough to be caught in a rip or surprised by a violent wave. These are the ways that the world can digest you, not with cruelty or malice, but in a passive, indifferent manner, just nature taking course, like how you take each breath or how the wind rustles through the trees. But in fiction, nature can digest you in a much more literal sense. But before we get to that, a quick message from this video's sponsor, which is RushBArt. If your gamer cave is feeling a little lifeless, then head over to rushbart.com to get your hands on some vibrant prints inspired by your favorite gaming memories. Regardless if you grew up playing Counter-Strike on the school computers or Modern Warfare 2 with the boys on Xbox Live, RushBArt has something for everyone. I personally love this ink block rendition of Inferno's A-Site with a Japanese twist, but if you're more of a COD gamer, then there's no doubt you'll feel the steel beams of Rust calling to you. No matter what you pick, you'll be getting free worldwide shipping if you grab 3 or more prints. So head over to rushbart.com and grab your favorites now. Back to the video. In Gumption, Texas, the Earth opens up her maw to reveal a gigantic organism living below the surface. And it's also a national park. Created by Trevor Roberts, Mystery Flesh Pit National Park is a collection of letters, images, advertisements, and infographics set in an alternate universe where this superorganism is discovered by a mining company in the 70s. They capitalize on their discovery of this unique phenomenon in the most American way possible, by installing lights and air conditioning to turn it into a tourist attraction. The world's first living national park. Now, one could argue that any national park is living, filled with animals and plants that make up a thriving ecosystem. But the Mystery Flesh Pit isn't your typical national park. This cavernous creature is classified as a collection of geobiological structures that appear to mimic familiar organs, but its full extent is still unknown. From multiple circulatory systems to seemingly separate digestive tracts, the creature is hypothesized to be a superorganism, a collection of symbiotically related organisms that operate together to a mutual benefit. The Circus Gatti tragedy is an incident of note that demonstrates the superorganism's digestive behavior. A troupe of clown stunt people performed a high-wire show directly above the entry orifice, but some startled chimpanzees panicked and caused the entire team to tumble into the depths below. While the flesh of the creature was soft enough to cushion their fall, the slippery mucus coating the surface led them to slip further into the bowels, into a sack filled with what appeared to be digestive acids. Found by the rescue team hours after their tumble, the acid had melted the troupe into a foul amalgamation of flesh, still alive and conscious, unfortunately for them. Despite this dangerous environment, the Mystery Flesh Pit National Park became a massively popular tourist destination until its closure in 2007.
Seismic EKG monitoring stations detected muscle contractions originating from the northeastern limit of the Permian Basin Superorganism.
An electrical fault caused the superorganism to seize and swallow the 750 tourists and employees within. It's not really known if this creature digests in the same way that you or I would, but it certainly could, and as we see with the incident in 2007, would consume you. Not with malice, but a simple, hardwired, primal urge to feed. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy this one about the aquatic abyss that's quite similar. But if you really enjoyed it, you could consider becoming a YouTube member, which gets you bonus behind-the-scenes content and, of course, my undying gratitude. People like those awesome names that you're seeing in the corner over there help make this a reality. I really, really appreciate it. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.